Um, so if we're doing a Scottish stream, let's talk about the crankies first of all.
Oh no.
Let's start with the good stuff. Are we pro crankies or against the crankies?
I don't
I
get
haven't been subjected to pantomime. I'm anti-cranky.
I only moved here 10 years ago when I was already 19, so I missed out on a whole bunch of kind of formative young people Scottish things, which might be lucky, might not be.
Oh, we've already got people in the chat, so that's all good. We've already got Sam in the chat. Hey Sam, she's always the first one here, which is great. Loyal fan base.
Is that my Sam? Sam of the Joker fight, Sam?
Yes, that's right.
Hi Sam!
This is just all of us seeing left Twitter and then them getting to see our face. Oh, we've got Macats. Macats is in the chat as well, so we're doing good. That's all we really need, isn't it? To just get this. Yeah, we're good.
Ready.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, we're already hitting quite a few. So I'll just introduce what this is. So, some of you may have been here for the original Debate Bro debut, where me and 4 other people went absolutely nuts about how shit Labour are generally in the UK. So I thought, why don't we go nuts about how shit specific bits of Labour are, and let's all do that. So that's what we're doing here today. So we got David, who is the editor / one of the 20 people on podcasting as Praxis with us.
How we doing?
Yeah, we got Elijah, who's the host of the... I've written this terribly. What are you the host of, Elijah? Tell me, so I don't get it wrong.
So, I'm also one of the millions of people on podcasting as Praxis, but I'm the host of a music podcast called The Bottle Cap Preachers.
Yeah. We got James, who is, and I'm going to read the entire thing out, film critic, comedian, and co-host of the Anime podcast.
Hello!
Yeah, and we got NParticipacion, who's one of my random Twitter mates who drinks a lot and streams on Twitch as well. Who also who lives on a lonely island, and so whose internet might cut out a lot because of the CIA. But we'll move forward. So I'm going to start with... I was trying to think about how do I explain how fucked Scottish Labour are. I was really trying to figure it out. And I thought, well, why don't we just look at the numbers and see how fucked it got. So, in 2007, in the Holyrood election, Scottish Labour gets 32.2% of the vote and 46 seats, which is good for second, which is pretty good. It's not great, but, you're at least only 1 seat behind the SNP. And in 2010, they get 42% of the vote and 41 seats, comfortably the biggest party in Scotland and Westminster. Then comes 2011, you get 31.7, still in second place, fine. Then you have the independence referendum, which ends 55.3 to 44.7, and now the numbers get fun, because in 2015, Labour get 24.3% of the vote at Westminster and 1 seat, which indicates that there might have been some kind of problem. I don't know. Maybe there wasn't a problem. Maybe it was all fine. Then you get to 2016, where they get 22.6%, finish third, and have 24 seats. Then we have 2017. It's all right. 27.1. You're still in third, but you get 7 seats at Westminster, so you've timesed it by 7. That's pretty good. That sounds pretty good to me. But then 2019 rolls around. You get 18.6% of the vote. You finish third in the popular vote and 4th in seats, and you're back on 1. So that's basically, it's fucked. I think anyone reasonable would admit that this is fucked. And so we're going to have a bunch of people here with us who are going to help us figure out what should change or whether Labour even can change in Scotland. So we're going to kick off with James, who's going to do his pitch for what he thinks can and whether it can change or and how it should change if it can.
Yeah, so the main problem that Labour has in Scotland is a legitimacy problem. Now, from the background that I come from, which is sort of like a trade union, working class background, you vote for Labour, you don't trust Labour. And that was the way that, the 80s and the 90s grew up for me. A lot of the most important working class say, theatre or music that comes out of Scotland from, the 30s through to the 80s, there's not a lot of trust of Labour there. And it's because you know that they're not going to have your back in a pinch. And what happened in the 90s was they got outflanked by the SNP on the left. And now the SNP are not a particularly, left organisation. But if you're getting outflanked by a neoliberal organisation like the SNP, then you really have to be looking at the problems that you've got. And it just comes down to they're not doing the things that they need to do to back people up.
Right. Okay. So now we'll move on to Elijah, who will have his 2 minutes of uninterrupted talking time.
Cool. I mean, what's the kind of main focus here? Is it sort of what happened to Labour historically in the last 10, 15 years?
You can do historically and then move on to how they can reverse some of that if they can, even.
So I don't have like a full-on upbringing background in Scotland or an awareness of the Labour Party that goes beyond 2010, which is when I moved here. But my first sort of big political event to happen living in Scotland or just living in the UK was the independence referendum.
Oh.
And from what I sort of saw and understood, the problem Labour had was they failed to see that leftism as a sort of grassroots popular movement was kind of siding with independence. That's debatable to an extent, and there was co-option of the movement, and there's a whole big discussion to have about that particular issue. But it definitely cost them votes in terms of people seeing Labour campaign for Better Together alongside the Tories, the whole thing about using Tory money and Labour faces. It all felt like a bit of kind of a sneaky sort of we'll pull over the eyes attempt kind of thing. We're being told by the party that's meant to represent the working class to vote for something that is very clearly being promoted and funded as the interest of the ruling class. And that just, it's a credibility thing, as James said, but it's also just a divergence of awareness of political ideology, because Labour all of a sudden is pretty obviously, to a lot of people, not on the side of progress. Now, whether you think Scottish independence is like, an actual leftist progressive movement could be debatable. I have some very clear thoughts on what I think it is, which we'll probably get into at some point. But I think that's, in a nutshell, that's probably their biggest problem. They decided to sign up to unionism and British nationalism as an ideology, and they failed to see the sort of raw grassroots leftist power that was in the Yes movement, which was a huge grassroots movement. It was massive. And it's been co-opted by the SNP, which translates into hegemonic electoral success for years on end. And it could have been co-opted by a leftist movement if that movement had had the wherewithal and the awareness to understand that it needed to be leftist to harness it properly, because Scottish Labour has some problems with Blairism and being basically a centre-right party. But it also needed the willingness to sort of follow a leftist tradition along the lines of Connolly and Maclean, which isn't at odds with or doesn't have a problem with the breakup and destruction of the UK, of the British state. And that's a problem. There's an issue right there. I think leftism in the British Isles in general needs to be of a Connolly and Maclean sort of line if it's going to get proper traction. There has to be some big break and some big shift in terms of the relationship with left in this country or in the UK and the continued existence of the British state. So Labour dropped the ball on that one. Whether they could have is probably for historians. I don't know if the ideological will or the political will was there. I don't think it was. And I think that's reflected in some of the stuff that we're seeing come out today in terms of
a lot of stuff today that we're probably going to talk about.
Yeah. That's probably about it. I think they fucked up on the independence issue and on the national question. I think that's going to haunt them for a long time to come, because I have a feeling it's pretty much inescapable that leftism in Scotland is going to be tied to the independence movement.
Okay, so next we'll go to, because we're going in the order on my screen. So David, you're up. Do your bit.
Scottish Labour is shite. There's no really any other way that you can put it. It's shite. I left Labour just not long after Starmer put out his cabinet positions because, you know, reasons unrelated to Scotland, but they were shite. And the party in the UK is pretty much tacking the exact same way that Scottish Labour has tacked for a long time now, which is this uncaring and unforgiving slide into this neo-Blairite kind of position. It's hard to quantify exactly what it is that's wrong with it because there's so much and there's so many different parts of it that are actually just fucking terrible. So my experience of the Labour Party itself was joining in 2017 after the election because I thought, fuck yes. And then not long after that, going to a CLP meeting and just being absolutely drained of the will to live. It was the most debilitating experience of my life because I was surrounded by people who were there to try and do the same thing that I wanted to do, but with none of the will to actually do it. They were only there going through the motions because they have done all their lives. And this is an endemic problem that Scottish Labour has. It's full of almost careerist campaigners and careerist members, like people who are just so firmly embedded into their CLP that they just cannot see doing anything differently, and all they want is a return to the good old days, which was obviously 1997 to 2010. As for whether or not it can actually be fixed, I don't think it can in any way, shape or form, because we've seen, just as Elijah was talking about, like a mass influx of the Scottish left into the SNP off the back of the Yes campaign, which was a huge grassroots left-wing movement. And their entryism into the SNP has achieved a landlord bailout. Like, it's not really made the party much more of a leftist party. Even if you were to get all of those people back into Scottish Labour and really push, I don't think you would do anything because the rot is embedded so deep in every single position that you just can't do anything. I mean, Richard Leonard's like nominally, he actually is like a fairly left-wing guy. Like he's quite a mild social democrat, I'll give you that, but he's a lot better than almost the majority of the parliamentary party in Holyrood. And what's he done? What's he been able to do? Nothing. If you look at the Labour report and everything that they were trying to do, the records in UK Labour, Scottish Labour is the end result of complete success on that front.
Oh, there you go. It's shite. I think we more or less agree on that across all of us. Like, all right. So finally, NParticipacion. Give us your 2 minutes.
Okay, so I joined Labour in 2015 to vote for Jeremy Corbyn, all that kind of shite, and I've since left and I'm now in the IWW. And part of the reason for that is that I feel that Labour doesn't really represent me and has perhaps never represented me, and particularly as like a rural person, all that kind of stuff. Your vote under FPTP is not going to get you like a Labour representative in Parliament, no matter what you do. So, like, extra parliamentary means are probably the only way of doing any kind of socialism for me, or feeling involved in any kind of socialism. But all that aside, I think the fundamental problems with the Labour Party in Scotland stretch back years and years and years, and they're based partly on like complacency of having that solid red base north of the border, and thinking, you know, they can always rely on these people to vote for them, and like they've got nowhere else to turn to essentially, and that Scotland will always be red no matter what. A similar complacency as they seem to have experienced in the north of England, which has since kind of disintegrated for them as well. But I think a lot of the problems in Scottish Labour in like most of our like kind of most recent years have been based on the constitutional question. I think as Elijah was talking about there, like they sided with British unionism, and the problem is there's already a unionist party in Scotland. There's the Conservative and Unionist Party, and like so, there's no point in the Labour Party being both conservative and unionist in some sense itself. If you understand what I mean. And so, I mean, that's a big part of Scottish Labour being shite, but just also the abandonment of its traditional work, traditional fuck off. I'm I don't mean traditional working class the same way these fucking blue Labour pricks mean it. I mean, like, their actual traditionally held base in the working class of Scotland. If you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So they've abandoned that, and they've abandoned any commitment to like further political devolution. And so, like, as far as I'm concerned, they should either just double down on the unionism, dissolve the Scottish Labour Party, and just like have a British Labour Party, or they should actually take a kind of studied position of like strategic ambiguity on the constitutional question, as Jeremy Corbyn did with Brexit until they all fucked it up for us, and like, work on that basis instead of just being another unionist party. Aside from that, I mean, what else can you say except what's already been said? Like, I'm kind of disadvantaged by coming on at the end here and reiterating other people's points, but I would leave it at that maybe. So I don't know if that's 2 minutes, but that's my bit.
Yeah, it was more than enough. I think we got the idea there. Okay, so we have had some questions come in. So, first question that came in. English people often point to Scottish nationalism as a positive civic nationalism. Is that how it's understood in Scotland? How true is that of Scottish how true is it that Scottish nationalism is civic nationalism? So I guess we'll roll in the same order we did before and then do a reverse order for the next question.
So the thing that you have to remember with Celtic nationalism is that it's a nationalism against something. So in Ireland and Wales and Scotland, you're not English. There's like lots of historic reasons for that, but we have something like the worst things that there are about England. That's not what we are. Now, you could argue that, say, like Scottish people like to think that it's not a racist country. I live in Ireland now, and when I moved here, people would say to me, "Oh, we don't have racism here like we do in the UK," which is clearly bollocks. But you get to tell yourself a nice little story that you're not them. And English nationalism works very much like so. Celtic nationalism is a negation, where English nationalism is like we are ourselves, and that's what's great about us. And so they work from a very different playbook. And nationalism is really complicated, but the way that I would put it down is like nationalism is like an asshole. If you know how to play with it, you're going to have lots of fun. But if you don't, you're going to end up covered in shit.
Well, that's good. We're going to have to burn the VOD now. No, I don't think we are. We're not going to have to burn it. It's all fine. I say way worse things on this stream every time. So, Elijah, you're up next.
Oh boy, right. I got a lot of things about this. This is a very multifaceted question. First of all, as a sociology graduate, what does civic nationalism mean? Like, what is it? There's a descriptive aspect to it where you're talking about a country that issues nationality, like passports, according to either jus sanguis, so law of blood, or law of the land, right? So a civic nationalist country is one where you're a citizen if you're born there, irrespective of where your parents were from or what your bloodlines are. And the alternative is where nationality is handed out based on legacy, ancestry, or blood. Most countries have kind of a half and half approach, where you do get nationality for being born there. You can assimilate easily enough. There's no hard blood sort of separation, but they do have means of giving nationality to people who maybe, like Italy, for example, if your grandparents, I think, were citizens, you can apply for a passport. Ireland has a whole sort of repatriation diaspora project on the go. So in terms of what civic nationalism means in that very strict sense, yes, Scotland absolutely is, because, well, there's no immigration laws for Scotland only. And if you come to Scotland and you become Scottish, that's more of a cultural and a social issue. And I think it's pretty obvious, like the lived experience, that there's people in Scotland who are Scottish, but they're Pakistani Scottish, or they're Indian Scottish, or they're English Scottish even. That's a bit of a weird thing to sort of understand, because it conflicts with the wider issue of what is the Scottish national character in a cultural sense. And I don't completely agree that it's a negation. I think it's more of an assertion of nationhood that isn't there yet, right? It's not a we're not English nationalism. It's a we would like to be formally recognized. We would like to sort of coalesce as an actual entity that reflects a cultural, linguistic, social understanding of what nationalism is. The sort of basis for determining what is a nation, what is nationhood, is pretty complex, and there's a lot of work in sociology about this. I like the Ernst Renan idea that it's a daily plebiscite. Everyone wakes up every day and pretty much agrees that they are Italian or they're German. And if people sort of woke up one day and stopped thinking that, there'd be a problem, right? It's a kind of a social construct that has a reflective relationship with behavior, social attitudes, cultural things, historical things, linguistic things, all this kind of stuff. But it's also normative, right? It's not just descriptive, it's also normative. It's also something that you can use, that you can hold up and you can say, we want a national character that reflects pro-immigration values, which you kind of have to have if you're going to be a civic national country. If you're going to let people into the country and be part of that country without going into the genealogy and checking their DNA and their heritage, it's an important sort of principle to have. And I think if you look at the, I don't want to just focus on like electoral results, because sure, Scotland voted Remain. I don't know if that's if that's like, you know, hard proof that it's a pro-immigrant country, but I definitely think you can look at a long governance from a party that is concerned with putting out pro-immigration messaging and saying that they are welcoming in terms of their attitude and their approach. And you could connect that to a corresponding social attitude that develops, which is then reflected in things like referendums. So I think, yeah, Scotland is a civic nationalist country, but it's not one particular issue. It's not quite as clear cut as that. That's about as extensive as I can get without going off on a whole lecture
we've got
about
to try
it.
and keep it a bit.
Yeah,
I realised
sorry.
I asked a bad question because it wasn't quite on the topic, but I found it interesting, so I thought I'd ask it. All right, David, you're up.
I don't like nationalism. I don't like civic nationalism as a kind of idea, purely because this is a very, very baseline fucking take that I've got here, so don't read into it too hard, because I can promise you I haven't. But like, nationalism is nationalism. It is the denial of something to others based on an arbitrary line on a map. Like, I would much rather that there was a working class movement that was, you know, cross borders, not giving a fuck about anything like that, and tearing down any old systems that we've got, rather than just this one specific one and then attaching some nationalism to it. Because I just don't see it ending well in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. I don't like nationalism. I don't like the concept of it.
That is more or less my position on it, to be fair. Because famously civic nationalist country Turkey, not great. As that turns out, as an experiment, didn't work fantastically. All right, Ben, you're NParticipacion. I've just called you out there by name. Sorry, mate.
That's fine. As long as the massive Nazi that lives near me doesn't find me, I'm okay. I'm probably in a similar situation to David there. I have a similar take on nationalism, which is perhaps unsurprising. I think civic nationalism is nice as an idea. I think there are things that constitute our idea of what is Scottish civic nationalism that are worth salvaging, and that are like the social cultural aspects of Scotland that I do like and don't think should be just thrown under the bus or whatever, throw the baby out with the bathwater or that. I voted yes in the referendum. I think Scotland should be an independent country, if only just to destroy the UK, because that has to happen. Just absolutely dismantle the fucking thing. But civic nationalism, Scots nationalism is distinct from English nationalism, I think, because English nationalism is, I wouldn't even say, like, the whole Orwell thing about like patriotism being defensive and nationalism being offensive and all that kind of shit. I mean, the problem is with English nationalism, it is exactly what Orwell describes as the defensive patriotism, the very nice thing that everybody can get behind, all the church maids cycle into work and all that bollocks. But it is also the we will murder you in your beds kind of thing if you're the wrong colour. When you get right down to it, I mean, like, we've seen the wages of English nationalism or of British nationalism over the past few years, and it has been absolutely blood-curdling to witness. Is Scottish nationalism an antidote to that? No, I don't think so. I think what we can do in this country is we can provide an alternative to that if we're really dedicated to it and like actually get our finger out and have working class movements for like social change. But nationalism alone is not going to do that, and I don't think Scottish nationalism is meaningfully distinct from English nationalism in the sense that it provides a vector for progressive change. I think that's pretty much the whole thing of my take. I don't know if it was incoherent or not, but fuck it.
It was pretty coherent. I enjoyed it, definitely. So does anyone want to come back on any of that? If you want to, you can unmute your mic and come back and reply.
Yeah, just like really quick. There's a problem here that I come into a lot, and maybe it's just because of what I studied, I don't know. There's two different ways that the word nationalism is used, and one is the one that we commonly understand as a political force that sort of ties into the right wing, glorifying the country and finding an enemy to sort of rally around being against. And then there's the other way to use it, which is just how do you define nationhood? How is the nation state constructed? And because we live in a post-Westphalian system where we have nation states, that's just how it is. You have to do some level of analysis of understanding, how are you going to exist in this context? Because unfortunately, you can't. The Soviet Union had to abide by sort of market principles and engage in a form of capitalism, despite it being, anathema to the ideology. There's a context. We have nation states, nationalism in one particular way of the usage, and this is where civic nationalism comes from as an academic term or as a functional term, is just one way of approaching that existence. Because unfortunately, we can't just tear down all the borders and have no countries. We have nations. That's the sort of situation that we're in, that we have to deal with, and it's just a way of defining how you approach that situation.
I think I saw James wanting to come in there. So
yeah, I mean, we are straying like far from the topic.
Yeah, but
such a hot button. But I mean, I pretty much James Connolly is my hero. I sort of grew up in the streets of James Connolly. I moved to Ireland for James Connolly. He is a person that can show you what you can do with nationalism and what you plan to do with it as well. And he right away had a very dubious relationship with Labour. It was very fraught, He said to Keir Hardie effectively, look, we don't need a Labour Party, we need a revolutionary party. And I think, if you want to know what's wrong with the Labour Party in Scotland and beyond, go read James Connolly and he'll tell you everything that's wrong with it, because he was there for its DNA and he called it out then.
There you go. Turns out the problem was in there at the start. Who amongst us could have guessed that? So I'll try and bring it back to Labour a little bit, or at least someone is taking a shot at Labour here, which is a new party more viable in Scotland, given the different electoral system? Could a new left party appear there, where it's harder in the UK as a whole for Westminster elections? So that is kind of a shot fired at the Labour Party, and specifically the Scottish Labour Party. So we'll go in reverse order. So we'll go from NParticipation, and then we'll go back.
Okay, so I saw an interesting thread on Twitter today, actually, about the prospect of a new left party in the whole of the UK, and going over the experience of the Respect Party before it became a vehicle for George Galloway's ego.
Was that the thread I was in?
I think so, yeah. And it was an interesting kind of take, thinking about that. And Scotland is interesting because obviously Scottish Labour is just a useless fucking lump. It's irrelevant almost to Scottish politics. It's a two-party system, and it's the Conservatives and the SNP that are reaping the benefits. And there's a few marginal gains from other parties like the Scottish Greens or whatever winning in the regional lists, but there's nothing else really going on. I think actually, yes, Scotland could like be the test bed for a new party, if only because, like, I don't know, like, how did Rise do? I can't even fucking remember how Rise did. But like, there was also the Scottish Socialist Party who, you know, they've never maybe had electoral success or anything like that. But I always liked hearing the fucking speeches and all that kind of stuff. How we need like a £10 minimum wage. We need to get the fuck out of Iraq. Always enjoyed that. Always thought there was a space for populist left politics in any part of the country, but perhaps particularly in Scotland because with the devolved parliament, it's a smaller kind of place, and like if you're in the central belt or that, there is the space for that kind of politics. I may be wrong though, because I live in the fucking rural periphery of nowhere. So I mean, that's my take.
All right, we'll go back to David then.
There is room for another party, but I would argue, do we really need one? The Green Party in Scotland is nothing like the Green Party in England and Wales. It does have a lot of pretty decent left credentials to it that would be worth pushing for. And really, if entryism was going to be done on any party in Scotland, it should be the Green Party, because it's going to be the easiest to push left because they're already halfway there. It definitely is easier to some degree because of the way that the electoral system in Scotland works. But there's no way that anything that you would replicate either through a new party or through entryism, like through the Green Party, would be possible through, say, try to fix the Labour Party. That's such an uphill struggle compared to either of those two things. You'd have much more success doing either of them.
Right, we're getting a lot of fuck the Labour Party tonight. Elijah, your turn.
Yeah, I'm not sure if like David, if space for like a new sort of Labour type party is the best idea. I definitely see how there could be a desire for a party that has, at least like on an aesthetic level, for example, the red colours and the right kind of symbols, tries to tap into an explicit, maybe like a red Clydeside heritage or like an explicit revolutionary Scottish politics heritage that the Green Party might not entirely have because it is a Green Party, but they are also much more left-wing than the Green Party in England and would be open to entryism, as David said. I'd be more interested in trying to organise, and you could do a party for it, doesn't really matter, at a more local level in terms of councils and stuff. I think that might have a lot more options for success and a lot more gains to be gotten from it than trying to enter the sort of higher up electoral system for Holyrood or for Westminster. I don't think the SNP is really a two-party system. I think it's a one-party system, and I think there's going to be some interesting factional issues that are emerging now on social issues and economic issues, and I think that's probably worth keeping an eye on. Sort of what's the internal struggle in the SNP going to be, and I just don't think there's really space for a new party to attempt to sort of encroach electorally on a national or a Scottish level. I think localism is probably where it's at. Whether that's a loose association of independent councillors, or if you actually, try to do a party that only runs for councils, that might be a really interesting thing to do. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so James, it's you're bringing up the rear, so go for it. Wow us.
Yeah. So just on the topic of the Green Party, I think David's right. Probably the single best Scottish politician at the moment is Andy Whiteman, who's in the Green Party. He wrote a book called The Poor Have No Lawyers, which is singly the best working class writing about politics in the land of Scotland in about 50 years. There's an argument to be said it might be the best, in the 20th century. So, like when the independence referendum didn't go through, there was in groups that I knew, an attempt at entryism into the Green Party, and the higher ups pretty much shot that down quite quickly. So again, it's like one of those, like, you're then attacking certain people's positions. It might be easier now than it was back then. I don't know. So in some aspects, I would worry about the Greens in that way. To bring it back to Labour, though, like, yeah, I don't know if there needs to be another party, but what would probably be the best option is if Labour started doing the things that Labour should have been doing the whole time. Because there's huge chunks of the Scottish population that will just vote Labour because that's what they've always done. My gran, doesn't matter what the situation is or what's happening, she votes Labour, her dad voted Labour, her dad voted Labour. And so there's something you can do with that effectively. If you're seen to be on the streets helping people, if you're helping people like fight their landlord, if you're not setting up food banks but the alternative to food banks, if you're like doing things, if you're helping people, actually like substantially helping them, then you won't have to worry about having the Daily Telegraph do a good write-up. You won't have to worry about the BBC being nice to you because it won't matter, because people will have your back because you've got theirs. And that's what the Labour Party should have always been, since ever. And it's not. It's the party of the managerial position. So I don't see the room for a new party in Scotland, but I see the room where Labour could go, but definitely won't because they're Labour.
Yeah, and also Keir Starmer is the leader. I don't know how you reverse that situation with Keir Starmer as the leader, with Scottish Labour in the state it's in. If people can correct me, didn't they elect a Blairite as their deputy leader in their most recent deputy leadership election? Yeah. And like a pretty bad one at that. It's like, so far as there can be a good Blairite. So like, what's this character like? Like, how bad is this character, and how bad does it point to a wider problem in Scottish Labour?
Yeah, I mean, like for a while there, Scottish Labour were really holding on to the Blairite position, and they were kind of like the head wreckers in the north, effectively. And that's a good chunk of the reason why they've been getting their arse kicked up and down in votes and in polling.
Yeah. So we got another question, again from Choppy, who's really just the king of asking good questions. So when I was reading out the numbers, there was the big elephant in the room, which was the independence referendum, which is when this sharp decline really sort of precipitates in an electoral form. So you go from 41 seats in Westminster to 1. Like, that's catastrophic, and it's no coincidence, I think, that happens after the independence referendum. So Choppy asks, what should Labour do if the SNP win the Scottish elections, which I think we're more or less in the position where we can say that's going to happen in some fashion. Should they back another referendum if that's what the SNP push for? Would that revive them at all? I'm not even sure that would revive them. But guys, we'll go back from James, and then we'll go back in that order.
Yeah, that's pretty simple one. That's not within itself, that situation, that's not going to help whatsoever. There's too much goodwill that's being lost in a short period of time for that to be helpful.
All right, Elijah, go for it.
It's definitely the right thing to do. I don't think they'd get any gains from it. Like James said, it's too little too late. If they were serious about attempting to rebuild some good faith, then they should definitely have a position. If they don't want to be outright pro-independence, they should take a position that it's not something that really matters, that a Labour Party in Scotland will fight for the interests of the working class, whether it's part of the UK or whether it's independent. I don't think they have the political acumen to walk the line. I don't think they have the ideological will to go there. But it is definitely the right thing to do. I mean, the mandate is pretty fucking clear. And if they go full unionist, which I think is what is likely to happen based on what we've seen today,
the Ian Murray stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. If they go full unionist, they're just going to lose. That they're going to be trading the same group of voters back and forth between the Tories and Labour, and it's not going to get them anywhere.
Yeah. All right, David, you're up.
No, they shouldn't necessarily be backing it now. That seems contentious. And the reason that they shouldn't be backing it is because they should be pushing for an alternative to this. And this is the kind of thing that you need a strong Labour Party in Westminster for, that would be able to push for something that would actually be really useful for everyone, which would be massive electoral reform across the UK, the creation of an English Parliament, and full federalisation. Now, that would definitely change the layout. It would remove the question of Scottish independence. It would allow the borders to remain as they are. It wouldn't create a new country and split people off. It wouldn't be nationalism. It would be a reframing of what we've got. And I think that's the best thing that could happen. Unfortunately, it won't. It's impossible because Keir Starmer's in charge. Richard Leonard has no backing whatsoever for anything. Even though he's spoke up in favour of this, he's got no power to actually achieve it. And obviously, the Tories would absolutely say fuck off that. They don't want the creation of an English Parliament. They don't want to equal the power share between the four nations. None of that works because they are the ones sitting with the levers of power, and that's the way they like it. Now, what Labour should do, if the SNP win the Scottish elections, is basically call it a day, liquidate themselves, and never bother again. That's probably what they should do. What they will do, though, just as Elijah said, is they'll go hard, full-on unionist. They'll probably all come out with Northern Sassies. It's just going to be an absolute shit show.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. And participation, go for it.
Well, it's kind of difficult to add to what's already been said, to be honest. I think, yes, probably they're going to double down and, do the whole unionism thing and just, absolutely shag the dog on the constitutional question without offering a viable alternative. And, yeah, just what Scottish Labour always does, just be, not Tories, the not Tory option for unionism. And it's going to suck absolute arse. And yeah, I agree with Elijah. I think the moral thing to the sensible democratic thing to do would be to treat the continued SNP dominance in the north as a continued mandate for another referendum and see what happens. And I know it's probably not very popular to relitigate the referendum over and over again, but I really do think we were kind of fucked over by the Murdoch press at that time, and I think we probably would have won it if we did it again. But that aside, what's already been said already pretty much sums it up. I don't know how much to add, to be honest.
I'm going to point out that David appears to have put parliamentary heptarchy in the chat, and I am well up for parliamentary heptarchy if that means that I get to be in Mercia.
I figured that would go well to the Crusader Kings channel.
Yes, exactly. We got Okay, we have one non-serious question about Keir Starmer, which is about whether Scottish clans will help us assassinate Keir Starmer. I don't think that's one we're going to go into too much detail on, but we do have the serious question. Given what's been said along the lines of this is what we should do, but Keir Starmer is in charge, what then is a realistic path for the left in Scottish Labour for the foreseeable future? What can be done to change the landscape within Scottish Labour in the longer term? So we'll go from NParticipacion back to everyone again.
Oh boy, you're starting me off with a hard question here. So what can actually be done to make a home for the left in Scottish Labour? I think I read a good thing in Tribune recently that was about rebuilding the red bases. Just have kind of local working men's clubs and all that kind of shit, or local kind of food banks, all that kind of bullshit. It's kind of stuff that the community organising unit is already trying to build a consensus towards doing. And I think that would be the basis for rejuvenating the Labour Party in any of the regions of the United Kingdom. I think you have to be there for people, as has already been said by I think James. And without that, there's no basis for the Labour Party to exist, really, aside from the union link. And even the trade unions aren't particularly good at watching out for their members, so maybe think about doing something with that as well. And what was the other part of the question? Sorry, I kind of zoned out.
I'll read it out again. So, given what's been said along the lines of this is what we should do, but Keir Starmer is in charge, what then is a realistic path for the left in Scottish Labour for the foreseeable future, and what can be done to change the landscape within Scottish Labour in the longer term?
Yeah. So I've kind of answered the question almost in full. It's just a preamble about Keir Starmer that I kind
Yeah.
of zoned out on because
Oh,
when I
he's
hear his name, my brain switches off.
yeah.
And who can blame me? Um, so yeah, I would say that do what the community organising unit has been talking about doing for ages and ages, and do what people who are kind of left of Labour have been talking about doing for ages, which is get involved with the local community, champion local causes, and build a consensus towards socialism that isn't necessarily like saying we should do socialism to people, but actually doing socialism, then saying to them, "Do you want more of this? Would you like to know more?" In the Starship Troopers sense. So that's my take.
All right. So David, thoughts on the question?
Leave. Just leave the party. It's pointless. If you've sat through a CLP meeting, you know what it's like. You know fine well. You're not allowed to say the word playwright. In fact, the CLP that I was a member of, I was censured once for using the word playwright by the only other person in the room who was younger than me. Like, if you want an idea of what it's like, it's horrible. Get out. It's not going to do your mental health any good. It's not going to do any sort of use. It's not Praxis to remain. Just get out. Go join the Greens, or go set up a new party, or get stuck in volunteering, set up local stuff, do literally anything else but stay in that party. Like, I cannot stress enough how much of a terrible, terrible place it is if you want to actually get anything practical done that is going to advance any sort of left-wing ideas.
He kind of answered the question of the first stream of this I did, which was do literally anything else. Join UKIP. Do UKIP entryism, everyone.
Honestly, yeah, do it. Like, I will not be happy until I have seen the full destruction of the Labour Party.
Oh no, that's me in trouble for hosting this. It doesn't matter. Who cares? They can kick me out if they want. Right, Elijah, go for it. Hopefully, a bit less controversial for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's no realistic path at all. Like David said, like Ben said, fuck off, leave. The reason why you should leave as well as doing something else and not just like stay a member in case you need to vote and then try to do something else as well is because you will be co-opted. You will be subsumed into the mechanism and the gears and the clockwork of an institutionally right-wing British Nationalist Party like the Labour Party, and it will get in the way of whatever else you're trying to do. You don't have to go do entryism to another party. You can try to set up like a local co-op. You can focus it council entryism. I think that's a really good idea. We should really be trying to get more people with like sound ideas and policies into council positions. But if you try to remain a member of the Labour Party, you will be co-opted against the actual beneficial goals of what you're trying to do. It will be counterproductive, and you will suffer in your attempts because of it. So yeah, leave.
Ouch. We got a lot of leave going on. Seems to be a general theme here. All right, James, go for it. Tell me to leave the party.
See, I spend quite a lot of the time with the people in my life saying that I'm not a contrarian. And for this stream, I was getting all my arguments ready. I was like, I'm going to hit them with some real fucking truth bombs. And they're going to be really surprised. They're going to be like, oh no, you're so edgy. But I feel now I'm getting outflanked on my own territory. So I might just start going the other way and start arguing why you should stay in the Labour Party. But yeah, no, I can't do that in good faith. Look, listen. Here's a really simple thing. If anyone from the Labour Party is listening, which I think is doubtful, or watching, go and do stuff. Be seen in the community. You know what? I might be showing my fucking arse here right now, but do you know how many times that I've met Ruth Davidson? Loads of times. I don't like her. Don't want to be around her. I've seen her in art galleries, gigs, clubs, doing stuff. Where my parents live up in the Highlands, our local MP is Pete Wisher, the ex-keyboard player from Runrig. You know where he is on Christmas Eve? He's down in the pub. He's there, he's buying people rounds, you have a chin wag with him, you shake his hand, you say goodnight. Look, listen, when the revolution comes, he's going to go up against the wall. There's no two ways about it. But at least you'll be aiming for the heart, So it's just, like, in some ways, it's that simple. Like, I don't ken anyone in, Perth and Kinross that's in Labour. I've never seen or met anyone. And, from the years that I've spent in Edinburgh, never met anyone that was in Labour, never met anyone that campaigned for them, never met anyone that was an MP that did anything. I might know one person actually at Edinburgh, and that's it. So what the fuck are you doing with your time? Go and do stuff. Be there. Like, just be part of the community for one.
That might be a function of the Labour Party being this extremely managerial party historically, I imagine, and especially Scottish Labour, which seems to have this seems to be the distillation of everything wrong with it, which is just terrible. Does anyone want to come back on any of that, or we could talk more about how you would try and organise people for councils in Scotland and try and see what we can get out of that instead of just trying to do this Labour Party dance over and over again. Or we could talk about how terrible the strategy is of putting Ian Murray front and centre. So
was the council thing directed at me? Because
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I would have run ages ago, but I'm not allowed to.
Why are you not allowed? What's happened?
I am not a citizen of an EU country. I don't get to vote, and I don't get to run for local election.
That's a cover story, by the way. You don't want to hear what you actually did.
Okay, I won't push that, but
like, I mean, if I was going to run, then the first thing you do is get in touch with all the people that you do know in your area and in the country who are sort of on your side politically, and you know a lot of them because we're terminally fucking online, and we all tweet bullshit at each other, and we all have Discord channels, and we all fucking share shitty memes about this and that. And you could definitely organize a good fucking ground army, about 20-30 people who would back you up, and you can win council elections because no one ever fucking runs for them.
Yeah,
right. It's like, I mean, Jesus, a few years ago we had a big issue because the National Front put a candidate up for council, and he was going to win because there was no one running against him, just for like where the area was. So we had a mad scramble to just get one person to actually run, and it was hard to do. No one wanted to fucking run because we've kind of resigned ourselves to the way you do politics electorally is at the level of the nation or the devolved entity. We don't really consider the local council to be all that important, but we should be. It's got one of the lowest fucking turnouts, And if we're the only people actually pushing for material change at a council level, I think we could have some degree of success, if for no other reason than no one else gives a fucking shit about it. It's also why the Lib Dems were able to win a bunch of fucking MEP seats in the European elections, because no one else cares. They were the only people who gave a shit, and they reaped some benefit for it. And I think, do that.
Yeah. The problem you have there, NParticipacion. Again, though, you get down to that thing is you'll get co-opted, and it happened here in Ireland quite recently with the Green Party. They won, a whole bunch of seats in the local elections, and a lot of people voted Green because it gave them the nice feels. Apart from everyone telling them that it was a bad idea, the first thing that they had to do was not vote for tearing down a tower block, and they fucked it. They fucked it right away. They couldn't even stop themselves. And then it was basically, well, no, we'll do this so we can do this. And then obviously they haven't done that. And I don't know if you know how powerful the Irish Simpsons meme page is in Irish politics.
Yes,
but
I love them.
The Green Party member, Hazel Chu, she got a lot of goodwill from that party. She fucked it right away, and then she jumped onto it, just like, as people were taking the piss at her. It was like, no, I'm one of you. Don't have a go at me. I'm one of you. Like, no, you don't realize, you have to have the substance to back it up. If you make the right noise, if you talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk, you're going to get fucked. And so, you got to back it up. And I feel that, if you don't have the staying power when it comes to a council election, you're going to make more problems for yourself than you are in the long run.
Is this, they spent months saying we're not going to go into coalition with Fine Gael, and then they are going into coalition with Fine Gael?
That's a separate issue with the Green.
Right.
That's a separate but equally terrible issue. As does seem to be the case with many of these entities we talk about for some reason. Okay, we do have a couple of questions that have come in, and one of them is apparently about beef in what I'm told, reliably told, is an acronym for Scottish Labour Young Socialists, so I don't know how many of you know anything about that, so I'll put it out there for you all. What's going on with Scottish Labour Young Socialists? Was there some sort of massive beef kicking off a while ago? Apologies for being hazy on details. Thanks for the detailed question, Tim. If anyone wants to take that, they can.
I don't think any of us know because one, we're not nerds, and B, we're not young enough to.
Yeah, I'm the youngest person here.
I know that. Oh, sorry.
And participation, do you want to go?
No, I'm saying I'm fucking ancient. I'm 31 years old.
Oh god, you're 5 years older than me. Jesus. What's going on?
All I know is that Scottish Labour Young Socialists seem to have almost constant beef, and there's like inner sort of splits between tankies and like sort of anarchists and shit, and there's always some kind of bullshit happening, mostly on like Facebook groups, and I just clocked out a couple of years ago because it's not worth anyone's time.
That's fair enough. I think we should avoid the beef as much as we can. This is not a gossip. This is not a gossip channel, guys. This is serious stuff where we do memes.
I'm here for all the gossip.
We'll do an after stream where we do gossip. How about that? Okay, so Agrock has asked, whatever became of Scottish Labour for Radical Democracy? That looked hopeful for a quick second. So I don't know what that is. So someone's going to have to explain that to me if they know.
As with most Scottish Labour vehicles, I've got no idea what it is, what it stood for, or anything like that at all.
Yeah, it's just fucking used to me, that one.
Well, there you go.
I don't
Turns
know
out
if
it was
this was
bullshit.
some sort of like, I don't know if it was some sort of attempt at like some sort of electoral reform, or if it was something to do with the federalism push that Richard Leonard's been putting through. I don't know if it is any of them. It's came to nothing because there has been no real movement on that beyond Richard Leonard saying, I would quite like this thing, and then literally everybody saying no because they've either got a vested interest in independence or a vested interest in the continuing function of the union as it stands.
Okay.
I'll give a little bit of gossip here in terms of the way that the Scottish Labour Party work. So I used to work in a cafe that was for people with like severe drug problems. Being from Edinburgh, that's most of the population. What it was a cafe that was run by volunteers that had addiction problems, and it was right next to Holyrood, and there was a couple of rooms that you could give out, and like you'd pay a little bit and you'd get some coffee and maybe some sandwiches if you paid extra, and that was kind of like how the business ran. And about every Thursday night, there would be a different Labour splinter group trying, like about 4 or 5 of them trying to book the same room. And you'd spend a lot of your time trying to organize. Like, I mean, people would like the SNP people would turn up and have a coffee. Like the Tories would come in and they would have a coffee, but that was it. This was like they needed rooms that were outside of the Holyrood system that they could come in that was close enough. And so it was that very much like, look, I'm going to reference Monty Python now, so I hope you're all just ready for it. It's the Judeans people front thing. They're always trying to get one over in each other, and it's because Labour, then as it is now, it's a stepping stone for your career. It's not about the politics.
That seems to be the consistent problem. Okay, so we do have a question which is about Aberdeen Council, which I'm told is a big problem. So, given that we know the Aberdeen councillors are going to be reinstated, how can Scottish Labour ever come back? So I'm assuming this is the council where Scottish Labour went into coalition with the Tories and made a right fucking mess of it. So why don't we go from NParticipacion? We'll go back in the sort of structured format for a bit.
Okay, I don't really know much about this beyond the very basic gist of it, which is that Aberdeen Council went into coalition with the Tories. And I just did my best to forget about it ever happening because it's just an embarrassment. You know what I mean? Being a Labour member at the time, I just thought, oh, fuck's sake, this is going to just bite us in the arse. I don't want to know about this. This is horrible. So, I mean, that was pretty much my take on it. I imagine that Elijah will know a lot more about it because he's based in Aberdeen as far as I can remember. So I'll just let things flow on from here because I have no idea.
Okay. I'll pass it on to David if he has any specific insights.
I don't have anything like I've not drilled down into the core of this, but like NParticipation's just said, the main issue was in this urgent requirement to stop the SNP taking control of the council with a minority. Labour councillors decided they were going to go into coalition with the Tories. Now, I hate the SNP with an absolute burning passion as a party, but I hate the Tories that wee bit more. And anyone who is in Labour, like, how can that not be the priority? Like, surely you hate the Tories and then you hate the SNP with the spare time you've got when you're not hating the Tories because you've done all that. Like, that's as far as anyone's concerned, the Tories are the number one enemy. So to go into coalition with them is a nightmare. Now, this happened after, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure Elijah will, after the independence referendum actually happened. Yes, he's nodding, right, good. That is just the base issue with Scottish Labour. They were happy to share that platform, fully share it, not do what Labour did, under Corbyn during the Brexit referendum, where they were offered, like, oh, do you want to share the stage with David Cameron? And Corbyn rightly went, get the fuck. Like, that's exactly what Scottish Labour should have done. They should have held their own. No, we're also campaigning for the union, but for these reasons instead, taking it from a left-wing slant. That's what they should have done, but they didn't. And these people were emboldened by that purely because Labour had shared the platform with the Tories. And it's shocking that they should not be reinstated as far as I'm concerned. And the fact that they probably will be is a pretty damning statement in itself.
Okay, we'll pass it on to Elijah, who apparently will be the expert on this.
Yeah, there's a wee bit more to it. What happened basically is that, yes, the SNP won the largest number of seats compared to the parties. They didn't have enough for a majority government. They were about to form a minority one. So the Labour councillors and the Tories made a deal to form a coalition government in the council. They needed one more. So the Lib Dem decided to resign from the party and as an independent give them that one extra number. Kezia Dugdale, Scottish Labour leader at the time, had previously said, don't do this, don't go into coalition with the Tories. She tried at least to, sort of kind of put down some ground rules there. They ignored her, so they were expelled from the party by Dugdale, but they're still there. They're in the council. That was a moment when a lot of people I knew here in Aberdeen who did still kind of like have a half-hearted hope that Scottish Labour might improve. That's when they went, fuck it, we didn't campaign for the Labour people, for them to not, first of all, go into coalition with the Tories, and second of all, not be Labour councillors anymore because they were kicked out the party and they refused to back down from their position. I don't know how much of it is a direct sort of emboldening from the Better Together campaign, because Aberdeen City Council is probably the worst council in Scotland. I think the numbers are something like 75% of all complaints about city councils in Scotland are about Aberdeen City Council or something stupid like that. There's a long history of really shitty PFI projects, a lot of open corruption, embezzlement, and some real fucking assholes in the Labour council government. This has been going on for years and years and years. Some great examples are when they tried to ban Alex Salmond from entering the council building. That was great. They were really mad. He was the first minister at the time, and he visits councils, he visits cities, and they were like, "No, you can't come in the council building. You're banned." There was the time when they threw a fit about COSLA, which is the organisation that distributes council funding in Scotland. The argument is we're not getting enough money. The Scottish government is taking all of Aberdeen's oil money and it's giving it to poorer council areas, which you'd think people in the Labour Party might be in favour of, like a bit of wealth redistribution, but no, they threw a massive hissy fit. And what they did is they left COSLA and they tried to set up their own organisation to sort of campaign for and distribute Scottish Government funds to councils. It was the Aberdeen City Council and a couple of Glasgow area ones that were also Labour controlled. There were some accusations of embezzlement going on. Not surprised. They basically had to come back with their tails between their legs shortly afterwards and beg to be readmitted to COSLA, despite the Scottish Government offering them like a bunch more money and funding being secured from Scottish Government for like a lot of pet projects that they had. It was just, it's an absolute disaster. I'll see if I can find that document about Aberdeen City Council fuck-ups that goes back about 10 years. If anyone's interested, it was a good read.
Yeah,
But,
drop that in the chat if you find it, because I'm sure everyone will love to read it. All right, we'll pass it off to James for the final take, I guess, on this one.
So what I'm going to do is what we call the Oxford question, where I'm going to pretend that I'm talking about the question that's been asked for a little bit, and then I'm going to move it on to territory that I'm more comfortable with and make it seem like I've answered the question. But I think, like, what Aberdeen Council is a good example of is what Scottish Labour are there for and the makeup that it has of Scotland in terms of class politics, but also what Labour Party members in Scotland want to do and think that they're there to do. I would probably say it was like 1918. I think there was the adoption of the new constitution that basically had a big effect in Scotland anyway, in terms of who could run for office in Labour and who could participate in it. So previously, you'd have the independent Labour members or the Communist Party would be able to have a say in what was happening in Keir Hardie's Labour Party to some extent. And this constitutional change really started to change what happened in Scottish politics in terms of who could run, what they're going to do, why they're going to do it for. And the real sticking point comes in 1926 when you've got the general strike, and you've got places in Fife and Glasgow mostly that are they're going on strike, they're having general strike. But how much of that happened in Aberdeen? Because Aberdeen is it's more of a base for money. Like, a lot of money passes through Aberdeen. It's got a lot of oil money there now, but it's always been where taxes have been collected and passed through rather than a lot of heavy industry. So that builds up over the years, though. Those Labour people that were there then, they pass on that legacy to the Aberdeen Council later on. And that's why Labour in Scotland are kind of a counter-revolutionary force, is because of these events that happened in the past.
There you go. We are kind of coming to... Well, okay, so I already replied to the suggestion box, which was do a gossip stream. I am going to do a gossip stream. We'll absolutely do a gossip stream. We'll have everyone on. We'll chat shit about all sorts of stuff. We'll be like Keemstar, but cool. We did kind of get to the come to the ultimate question here from Choppy, which is kind of coming to the conclusion we should just be sounding Labour's death march, at least in Scotland. So we'll work back in the order we came. So we'll go from James and go back. Do you think we should just be sounding Labour's death march? Just done.
Yeah, fuck them all, smelly cunts.
Well, there you go. I guess that's it. It's fucked. It's fucked, basically. All right, Elijah.
Yeah, sorry, I was typing there to put the report in. It's gone, and it's good that it's gone. Or it is going, is dying.
It can't change. It's fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Fuck it.
Fuck it. We move on. I might have to put a poll up and say whether we should just say fuck it or keep it going. All right. David, go for it. Be the yeah.
Yeah, we should be. In doing so, though, it's actually a hopeful thing. It's a good thing that it's dying and it's not going to be a thing anymore. The personification of the Scottish Labour Party and hopefully the UK Labour Party will basically result in an actual vacuum being formed. For all the people who are staunch Labour voters, who are left-wing, because they do exist. I have been one up to this point. Like every single election I've voted Labour, I've always had quite a left-wing perspective to myself. It's only gotten further left as we've gone on. These people do exist, and they might not particularly like me support independence. That might be the line that they don't want to cross. That's why they don't want to do entryism into things like the Greens, who are a pro-independence party, or the SNP, who are a pro-independence party. There isn't an actual space for me to happily tick the box. Having these people be given an option of picking a party that isn't just do the one you always do because that's what you always do, will hopefully lead to some sort of representation of those voices, which is only going to keep pushing things left. And if left politics are the focus here, because independence isn't guaranteed to land that way. It's not guaranteed to land that way at all. It might not. We don't know. But right here and right now, what we need is a push to the left, and any sort of voices in Parliament that can actually grant that would be a massive, massive boon to everyone in Scotland. So it's great that it's dying. It's great that it's going to go away, only if it's replaced with something else, because if not, there's just going to be an absolute vacuum in the left, and it's going to be down to all the centre parties and the right parties, and that's basically going to be it, because the Scottish Greens, like I say, they barely get a look into people because, like I just said, they're a Green party. They're not an out-and-out left party. It just so happens to be that they are a left party.
Okay. And NParticipacion.
Well, I think the Scottish Labour Party's got years and years of life in it. No, fucking burn it to the ground and salt the earth. Fuck the whole fucking thing. Get it to absolute fuck. Just absolutely destroy the fucking thing. It's been shit for like decades now. It needs to die. We need something better. And it doesn't necessarily need to be something parliamentary, but just anything at all. Just any fucking thing. Any popular mass movement. Any like populist left challenge to like the SNP or whoever. Just anything but this horrible demoralising shit show. Just bury it. Just sink it to the bottom of the fucking sea. That's all I'm saying.
This is way less optimistic, even though that wasn't very optimistic, than the general UK Labour one. The general UK Labour one was like, oh yeah, it's kind of fucked, but I guess it'll be all right if we just keep pushing. But apparently here it's just like, nope, we're done with it. Just annihilate it.
Well, the thing you have to remember is, like, in Scotland, there is more of a hope somewhere and in some places, you know? I don't know if it's just there in the general characteristic, but I mean, look, we're dour and we'll call a spade, but there's still like this sort of mawkish little bit of like crust in the Scottish heart that makes you hope for a better future.
All right, well, I hope we get there eventually. Anywhere in the UK, please, just any kind of good change. That's all we ask.
Come to Ireland. The water is fine over here.
I wish.
Just don't pay attention to the politics that are happening. Just come over. It's all good.
I did like Ireland when I went there. So I went to Dublin, but it was a bit expensive. But I
think the should be entryism into Ireland.
Yes, not UKIP entryism. We're done with UKIP entryism. Sinn Féin entryism in Ireland. That's what we're doing. That's what we're about, everyone. I just got... Alistair's just put in change UK question mark, and I'm like, no, we're not going to embarrass ourselves to that level. Like, imagine being that embarrassing that you'd have Chris Leslie as your big economic mind. I mean, come on, guys. The guy's name is Piss Leslie, for Christ's sake.
We might get far without a Milk Gapes impression, so I think we should probably not get to that point.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll share the anecdote I always share whenever I think of Chris Leslie, which is that we were suspicious he was going to defect when he finally showed up in Nottingham. So that should tell you all about his relationship with the city. Anyway, we do have... All right, this will probably be our final question for the night. So if Scotland was independent tomorrow, would you see the SNP remaining the major party, or the one party, I guess, or would a leftist Labour Party likely gain support? So we'll go from, I forget the order we did. So let's have it go from NParticipation back that way.
I would say it's probably more likely you would see a split in the SNP and see Labour gain ground. I think that the SNP is a kind of fragile coalition, a kind of a single issue, well, in effect, a single issue party that is united lots of different people: socialists, social democrats, liberals, even some fairly conservative people that are in favour of Scottish independence. And I think those kind of fissures would crack and fracture in a newly independent Scotland, where they would no longer be united by the issue of independence. And so I don't think that would necessarily translate into a gain for the Labour Party. So that's my take, pretty much.
All right. David, go for it while I arrange my papers that I keep losing track of.
The SNP is a weird party. If you know anything kind of even just vaguely about the history of like UKIP as a party, it started off with this really weird kind of totally different from what it came to be. Like it came to be dwindled down until it was literally just the far right that were sitting in it, and that was it. But it did used to have like left wing elements of it. It was a really strange thing. Now the SNP is basically UKIP, but they managed to keep building and building and building the numbers, and all the invested and interested parties are still there. They're still sticking to it. No one's split off because it's seen to be a viable strategy. Obviously, it's had a kind of very different inception from UKIP, but regardless, I think that still holds to some degree. Now, the minute that this, the minute that independence happens, what the first thing you're going to see is the SNP pretend it's fine, but crumble from the inside. You're going to see all sorts of different wings of that party try and maintain the name because the brand matters, and it's going to be the TERF wing is going to try struggle against the actual left wing of it, the full-on actual nationalists, because there is a contingent of them will focus against the left. It's going to be everyone against the left. Effectively, the left are going to be pushed out, and the rest will fight over the scraps. Now, that in itself means that we need to have an actual left party in place that people can vote for before that happens. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so keen on Scottish Labour not existing, because we need to have that party in existence for brand recognition, because as sad as it is, that is a thing that is required if you're going to try and get people to vote for it. You need to have that. And if we don't have that existing before this, you're going to see a rash of centre-right and right-wing parties poised to go, plus the Green Party, and that's going to be it. The left will not be organised in time because the left are so co-opted into a neoliberal party at the moment that they will not have the ability to just quickly get something moving. So, like I said, the death of the Labour Party is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because it completely deprives us of the ability to have an organised left within Parliament. And the sooner we get something effective in place, again, be it through entryism through the Greens, be it through the setting up of a new party, if we don't have that, it's all going to go to shit straight after independence.
Okay, we'll pass that on to Elijah.
Yeah, I think you'll definitely see some sort of fracturing in the SNP. I'm not quite as pessimistic about the left-wing faction within the SNP getting completely shunted out of the discourse as David is. I also think that the turf wing of the SNP is going to shunt itself out of existence before independence happens. There's already a little splinter party called the Independence for Scotland Party, or if you want to Google it, ISP. Yeah, I've landed myself on the Wings Over Scotland shit list for calling them a turf party on Twitter. That was fun. But absolutely, like post-independence, everything's to sort of play for. I have no idea what it's going to look like because so many non-independence geared bodies are going to have to refine themselves really, really quickly. And I feel like there's this widespread denialism about the chances of independence among parties that are not for independence, and they might have to find themselves having to pivot really, really quickly all of a sudden. And it's going to be super fucking chaotic, which might be fun. You kind of just pick your fighter, go with it. You can experiment a little bit, sort of see which parties kind of vibe with you. Whether if if Labour still exists, then they're going to have to not be unionist anymore. It might help them despite their wishes. You know, if Scottish Labour is still around as some sort of electoral force and independence happens, what the fuck are they going to do? Are they going to be the party that wants to rejoin the UK? Like, that seems like a non-starter. They're going to, but they're not going to prepare for that. So they're going to have to come up with something right then and there. So I have no idea. I am in the SNP, and there's a lot of people who are like hard left, like me, in the party, who are sort of worried about angling for a socialist and far left vehicle within the party that does get independence, and we can try to use the momentum from a successful independence campaign to launch a socialist party. But I have no idea. I can't tell you whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic. I don't know where it's going to go. It's going to be fucking chaotic, but it's going to be awesome.
I just want to point out that someone in the chat has put follow back pro England in the chat. So that is the best joke of the entire stream. Well done. That is the best one. Well done. Okay, I can't wait for Scottish Labour to be the Lib Dems. That's going to own. Okay, James, take the final word basically of this.
So, listen. I think what I've tried to get across to, like comrades in England is that for people like me that were in favor of the independence movement, it wasn't, you're trying to make the best of a bad situation. And so the idea of independence was it was going to be less shit. Like, let's try and get to a point where things are a little less shit than they are now. And I feel that Corbynism was the same thing. And I had lots of reservations about Corbyn. And a lot of people spent a lot of time wearing me down to the point where I started to back Corbyn. And in some ways, I kind of feel that was a mistake because for various reasons, I should have just stuck with my guns by saying he's going to fuck it and it's going to get fucked for the reasons that I believe. But that's what it was. Corbynism wasn't like, let's make a utopia. It was, let's make things less shit. And so it's always about when things happen. And so the question is, what happens if it's independence tomorrow? And it's not going to be good. It's not going to be pretty. But I would think for Scotland, it would be less shit because you wouldn't have Boris Johnson in charge. Like, no one's really got a love of the SNP apart from the businesses that are funding them and get kickbacks from them, etc., etc. But it would open up the space, however brief it is, it would open up that space to just make things a little more pleasant. Like, and I think it's hard to get across sometimes as well because, like, I have friends that say, are English that live in Scotland now. And they're just like, look, it's different walking around the streets of Scotland. Like, you can just feel it in the air. It's a less shit place to live. It's less aggro. It's less horrible. And that's something that we should, unfortunately, was that David just like typing up his like, what is less shit very quickly?
Yeah.
It's something to fight for, and it's like, imagine if Scotland got independence tomorrow, it'd be very much a case of like what the French Parliament looked like, at the very beginning of the French Revolution. Like, things would probably go very horrible very quickly, but it gives you that residue that you can work from. It's what Chomsky calls like the residue in the toilet, effectively. Like, you keep flushing and you keep failing, but over time, that line scale keeps building up and it's something that you can build on. And for me, that's what Scottish independence is. It's not a silver bullet. It's just making things a slightly better place to live.
I will point out that the chat has just like British public wrong about almost everything is the biggest truth. That's a truth bomb that's been delivered and will ever be delivered. And that Liverpool remains sound. I've been to both Liverpool and Scotland, both much better than a lot of places in England that I've been to. And I put that out there for all of you. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up because we're almost at time. So if any of the people who I've invited on want to plug anything at the last second, we'll go from James back down. So James, anything to plug before we go?
Yeah, so I do an anarchist podcast called Anime. So get that on Facebook, Twitter, and mostly Spotify. One of my alts, Minjily PFAF, is going to launch his comedy career in the next couple of days. So if you want to see some god-awful comedy, jump into that. And hopefully I'll be bringing my show, An Evening with James Connolly, to stages in the UK next year at some point.
All right. By the way, that alt is fantastic. I strongly advise you follow him. I don't follow him because I'm going to get drawn into a fight and forget it's an alt. But as has happened to a friend of mine, I think they got banned for swearing at the alt. Anyway, Elijah.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, clicked the wrong button there. I'm mostly a musician. I do a podcast called The Bottle Cap Preachers, where me and my folk bandmate, who's from Donegal, listen to chart music that we've never heard before in our lives. We just every week just go through what's in the top 5, and we listen to it, and we just sort of opine as musicians onto stuff that we don't know. So if you don't keep up with the charts but want to without having to listen to them, that's a good shout. The Bottle Cap Preachers, we're at Bottle Cap Pod on Twitter. You can just look for Bottle Cap Preachers. We're on Spotify and Castbox. And if you want to learn guitar or mandolin, give me a shout. I've been doing lessons on video calls. It's the only way I can keep some level of income because the pubs are going to be closed forever, and I'm not going to be able to go back to performing for a while. So yeah, if you want to learn some stuff, whatever, give me a shout or not.
All right, David. I think your job is to plug the particular podcast. So go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, you've muted yourself, mate.
Too many windows open. So I'm the editor, like I said at the start, of Podcasting's Praxis. You can find us on Twitter at PraxisCast. You can get it at iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, basically anywhere that you'll find podcasts. It's if you haven't heard it, it's a collective. I literally don't know how many people are on the cast. That's how many of us there are. So it's a kind of rotating cast. It's just whoever feels like coming on that week. We generally do the news. We'll do more in-depth episodes on specific issues. And recently we've taken to reviewing film franchises. So we've done Star Wars. We've done the Marvel Cinematic Universe from a left-wing perspective. And we are going to be pushing on to do Jurassic Park shortly as well. You can follow me on Twitter as well at Sanitary Nap Time. And that's all I've got to plug because I don't do anything else. It's just podcasting. Yeah.
All right. NParticipation. Plug your stuff.
Okay, well, I've got a Twitch channel, which is twitch.com/NParticipacion. I've also got my Twitter account, which is, well, I just get drunk on it and get depressed sometimes, but it's it's twitter.com/NParticipacion. And I'm also working on an as yet untitled Cosmic Horror podcast with one of my mutuals, so watch this space, follow me if you're interested in that, and I'll post up the first episode when it comes.
All right. And I don't have anything to plug other than this channel because I don't do anything other than play video games. But do catch me tomorrow where I will be playing Crusader Kings 2. What a shock, everyone. I'm playing Crusader Kings 2. I'll be playing as an actual polar bear that has become a landed character in one of my save games. So that'll be fun. We'll see what we do with that one. The Cute Butt Hauntology stream will be happening tomorrow. So it'll be tomorrow from 1 until 4. So I'll see you guys then. Thanks, guys, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And, yeah.
Had a great time. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Cheerio, folks.
It's been great.